Ultimately, we sort of backed into finding Clint through watershed management and their courses that they do around town in the various communities. Both Clint and Evan, I think, were just as excited about the project as we were.
So one of the big visions of this project for Billy and Karen was almost like an arboretum style, where we're gonna have almost like a Noah's Ark of plant species from a lot of the deserts of the Southwest.
Looked originally at the DIY kind of approach, and then ultimately decided to find somebody that had more skill and experience than we did to help out with the installation. And that's where Galaxy Gardens came in.
Their project was so awesome because they had already had some huge mature fruit trees on the property and a big giant grass patch.
Our ethos with Galaxy Gardens is to plant the water, then plant the plants. And part of that is to move rainwater through the yard in the most optimal way, as well as most updated irrigation system possible.
One of the things that we started to get interested in was rainwater harvesting and taking advantage of the limited rainfall that we had out here. So we had this 350-gallon poly tank installed, and then the overflow is piped to a basin behind the greenhouse. I think we had 3/4 of an inch of rain over 3 storms, and we filled the tank. Probably my favorite is this crazy little kind of drain board. It just reminds me of a dish drainer. We've got a 12 by 24 greenhouse that is covered with plastic because many of the plants in there either can't take summer rain or winter rain. And so in order to protect those plants, they've got a roof over them, but Clint created this low riprap gutter, so to speak, right at the base of the greenhouse, and it funnels into a very shallow arroyo that drains into a large basin just off the pool patio. But I was blown away. We got a 1/2 inch of rain on the day the project finished. I was completely blown away watching the just slow drip into the basin. My wife and I are veterinarians, so we also did a lot to accommodate not only the pets. We have dogs that spend a fair amount of time in the yard, and then we have 4 African leopard tortoises that roam the backyard. And they grazed on the Bermuda, so we weren't able to get rid of the entire lawn. We needed a spot for the dogs to be able to lay around in the shade and the tortoises to eat. But a lot of the other design elements that we incorporated with kind of our changes that we made were to accommodate the animals in the yard. So we've worked to bring in food plants that the tortoises are likely to eat. The bare areas that are rock mulched right now will ultimately have seed spread for both South African grasses that the tortoises will eat that aren't going to be invasive in our areas. They just don't spread in that way, but also native grasses so that we can provide a more natural food source that doesn't require as much irrigation for the tortoises. So anywhere where we increase the elevation in the yard, we tried to incorporate tortoise tubes. So the desert tortoises will have a couple of tubes in their area, and then the leopard tortoises have, I think there are 4 built into, or 3 or 4 built into the hills in the yard, and then others that are scattered around in the shade of the larger citrus trees just to provide them with cover. The Baja area is probably the one that Karen went craziest with. She did a ton of research on cactus and succulents, and we had just a huge want list of plants, and we were lucky to. Several of them, particularly the trees, as we started looking for them, there were points where we'd almost completely given up hope on finding any of them. One is it's a species of Lysoloma, like the desert fern or the feather tree, that's found in Baja. And we could have gotten away with something else that we could easily have found at a nursery, but we really wanted kind of specimens. And we were really fortunate to find those down at a native plant nursery in Tucson. We just happened to stumble upon them, as we were looking for something else one day. And in fact, we were so unprepared for running into them, we ended up renting a U-Haul truck one way out of Tucson.
Although it's really difficult to see new plants on camera, this area is planted out with a lot of edible plants for tortoises specifically. I would say 80% of the plants in this area have an edible nature to them, and the non-edible ones are there to create microclimates to shade their den area, which they would have out in the wild as well.
We've noticed, or we've identified 28 or 29 species of birds in the yard. And by point of reference, we took a 3-hour walk at the Gilbert riparian area last winter, and we saw 47 species in 3 hours, just 4 or 5 miles away from here. So I know we have the capacity to have more diversity of birds and more numbers and more interesting birds in the yard. But almost every year we have a pair of kestrels that will, and we've probably been through 3 generations or so at this point, that will select the nest box in the early spring, and then usually in early May, the nestlings will appear and fledge, and we'll get to watch them for a few days as they learn to fly more strongly. And it's kind of cool every morning when we get up, hearing their trilling calls as they fly in and out of the box with food or to lay eggs or whatever it is they're doing in there.
This was one of our largest projects we've ever done, where we got to be there for 6 weeks and really get to know our clients and really get to know the land and the garden itself. And what was really special about this project is that it checked all the boxes, all of the things that we hold to very important, from rain catchment to moving water through the yard, to soil building with mulch, native plants, rewilding, bringing in the pollinators, the birds, small mammals, those kind of things. And then also creating spaces that families can spend time together and enjoy the Sonoran Desert even in the hot season. And this project just hit it for us. All of us are really proud of the work that we did, and we look forward to doing more just like this.